What can I say about Kirby Ferguson? He made one of my heroes someone I hated because he stole from one of my heroes, which is Woody Guthrie was one of my heroes, and he stole from Bob Dylan. It was disgraceful. In the same way that when I was on the bus in Manchester, I once really heard someone say, you know that Shakespeare bloke, Romeo and Juliet, that's based on West Side Story. How does he get away with it? So many things I could say about Kirby. He's done TED Talks, he's been all around the world. And I'd love the first day when a student comes to me when I say, a lot of this is copied. They'll say, it's a remix. But, you know, the old phrase Isaac Newton said, you know, on the shoulders of giants. Hands up if you heard that phrase. Yeah? Did you know it wasn't Isaac Newton who said it? Yeah? Did you know it was plagiarized? Did you know he said it as a snub to Robert Hooke, who was a mathematician he fell out with? Because Robert Hooke wasn't necessarily a giant of a man. He was a bit short and slender of stature and very ill. Talk about fantastic. Isaac Newton, what a man, eh? Remixed Galileo's empirical work on gravity. Yeah? So not a very good example. But what is a good example is someone who actually takes things lightheartedly and reminds us that we actually do build our work on the work of other people. And there's times when it's okay to say, we don't need you to know who we've built it on. And there's times when we say it's not okay to do that. And to make the debate as to whether that's okay or not, may I introduce Kirby. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm Kirby. I'm from New York. I'm a filmmaker, and I made a 4-part video series called Everything is a Remix. I started it about a year and a half ago. It took about a year and a half to make it, all 4 parts of it. Each part is about 10 minutes long or so. You can watch it online, just Google it. It's easy to find. The first part is about music, second part is about film, third is about technology, innovation, and the fourth is about the law. So rather than tell you the premise, I'll start just by, oh, here it is, just by showing you the first minute of the first part to kind of set the stage. Here we go.
Remix. To combine or edit existing materials to produce something new. The term remix originally applied to music. It rose to prominence late last century during the heyday of hip-hop, the first popular music form to incorporate sampling from existing recordings. Early example, the Sugar Hill Gang samples the bass riff from Chic's Good Times in the 1979 hit, Rapper's Delight.
Now what you hear is not a test, I'm rapping to the beat. And me, the groove, and my friends are gonna try to move your feet.
Since then, that same bass line has been sampled dozens of times.
What a scene, pulling up with Jodeci, blasting out my 15. I got the good life, no strife, real nice. And I'm a papa, my son Trey.
Eu sou velho caderninho de telefone, com o nome e o número de monte de mulher. E ele vai ligar.
Skip ahead to the present and anybody can remix anything, music, video, photos, whatever, and distribute it globally pretty much instantly. You don't need expensive tools, you don't need a distributor, you don't even need skills. Remixing is a folk art, anybody can do it. Yet these techniques, collecting material, combining it, transforming it, are the same ones used at any level of creation. You could even say that everything is a remix.
All right, so remix, what do I mean with how I'm using this word? It's a musical term, of course, that's its origin. Remixing refers to taking existing songs, chopping them up, transferring the pieces, putting it all back together again, and making a new song. But that new song is still clearly comprised of old songs. So remixing could be thought of as the arrangement and transformation of samples, samples being the little chunks of music that you use to make the new song. But I think remixing is a good metaphor for any kind of creation. So taking existing stuff, copying it, transforming it, combining it, those are just kind of the basics of creativity. Now, this is in opposition to our myths of creativity. What we have right now is stories. We don't really have realistic ideas about how creativity actually happens. We have myths, stories, They're good stories, but I think they lead us astray in important ways. Here's the gist of creativity for most of human history. Touched by the hand of God. Creativity was something that was given to you from above, from God. So creativity was divine, and humans were considered powerful enough to create something out of nothing. Humans were channeling the beauty of God, the beauty of nature. And this is still sort of an idea that we've got. It's sort of stuck. Not that we think creativity is divine necessarily, but it's some sort of a heightened special accomplishment. So we use words like gifted and talented to suggest that this ability comes from someplace else. It doesn't come from you. It's coming through you. I gotta stop hitting the mics. A couple hundred years ago, the Romantics came along. Beethoven's an early example. And the Romantics kind of went the opposite direction with it. They claimed that their creations were their own inner expression of themselves, that their creations were coming from within, not from without, from within themselves. I gotta stop doing that. So the Romantics completely reversed things, went the other direction. Everything was an expression of their inner selves. And again, this is an idea that has sort of stuck. We like this idea of the singular genius who creates from within, bucks tradition, and kind of does his own thing. A light bulb. I can't talk about creativity in a presentation without showing a light bulb. So there's the light bulb. We can all feel okay now. This is our most popular visual representation of an idea. So, what does this tell us about ideas? It tells us that they happen fast. They happen like the flick of a switch. They come from nowhere. So you have darkness and then you have light. Ideas happen fast. Of course, the reality is that most ideas are kind of most creations are kind of a sprawling, drawn-out affair with a lot of small insights that are kind of distributed along the way. Les Demoiselles d'Avion, famous painting by Pablo Picasso. This is kind of our gold standard for creativity. So this was considered revolutionary. It was like nothing else that had come out before. But of course, it was a product of its time. Picasso kind of coaxed it out of his particular place and his particular time. So it was influenced by classical sculpture, by African art, by his contemporaries. He combined these things together to create this painting. So those are some of the myths of creativity. What is the reality? How do we create? 3 basic elements. First thing you got to get is domain knowledge. So you need to learn the language of your field. So in order to communicate with the culture, with your field, you need to learn its language, and you learn a language by speaking just like everybody else speaks. So you don't take the words and just sort of start doing your own thing with them. You're just trying to talk like everybody else talks. So we're talking about copying. So flat out emulation. You can't contribute worthwhile new works until you've internalized the knowledge and the techniques of your medium. Now you can see this in the career of any artist. Bob Dylan, for instance, his first album contained 11 cover songs. There were only 13 songs on the album. And early on, he seemed mostly intent on being Woody Guthrie, not on kind of being like the next Woody Guthrie, but on being like as much as Woody Guthrie as he could possibly be. And doing a lot of cover songs early in your career was, that was pretty much standard for musical acts back in the 60s. Your first album wasn't really expected to be anything more than just cover tunes. Richard Pryor, influential stand-up comic from the 1970s. Pryor introduced topics like race, sex, substance abuse, street life, just the stuff from his life into the realm of stand-up comedy, which is a pretty, buttoned-down realm for the most part before that. But before that, he was kind of doing like not a very good impression of Bill Cosby. If you watch Richard Pryor's early stuff, he's really doing kind of a watered-down Bill Cosby. But that was how he, learned his comedic timing. That was how he developed his craft. And, when he finally did merge in the elements from his life and did something that was more authentic to him, he, took off. Hunter S. Thompson invented gonzo journalism, so took the first-person novelistic voice and merged it with journalism, acknowledging that journalism can't be biased. There's always a voice. There's always a story that's being told to you. But before he invented gonzo journalism, he was doing straight journalism. And in his spare time, he retyped existing books. So he took The Great Gatsby and A Farewell to Arms, and he sat down and he retyped them word for word, just to get the feel, he said, of writing a great novel. So once you're grounded in your domain, it's then possible to create something new through transformation. So taking an idea, Streamlining it, expanding it, inverting it, making mistakes has a lot of value as a creative technique. It's very time-consuming stuff, but if you do enough of it, you can produce a breakthrough. Steam engine, James Watt created a major improvement to the steam engine because he was assigned to repair a Thomas Newcomen steam engine. So he wasn't just, making tea and saw the steam and thought, hey, it'd be great if you could use this in mining or whatever, It didn't just kind of come from nowhere. It was a gig, He was assigned to fix a steam engine that would stop working after a while. It worked fine for a while, and then it would kind of grind to a halt and stop, and you have to reset it, and it was really inefficient. So he spent 12 years fiddling with this previous design before coming up with his, which was, one of the catalysts for the Industrial Revolution. Typewriter. Christopher Lathan Scholes modeled his typewriter keyboard layout on a piano. This was fairly standard back then. Typewriters were often referred to as literary pianos, which I think is just a lovely term. I wish we still had that, literary piano. That's nice. So he took, the keyboard piano, 2 rows of keys, 1 lower, 1 higher, and that was the template that he started, mucking about with, and 5 years later came up with the QWERTY keyboard layout, which is still on all your gadgets now. Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison, of course, did not invent the light bulb. This isn't a controversial statement. It's well known. His first patent application was actually declined. It was considered an infringement. His second one was called an improvement in electric lamp. So it wasn't called the electric lamp. It was an improvement to an existing design. What Edison really did was produce the first commercially viable electric bulb. And he did that by trying 6,000 different materials for the filament. Again, all this stuff is super time-consuming. These all took many years. So these are all major advances, but they're not exactly original things. We already had typewriters and light bulbs and steam engines. Now, to make a big leap forward, what business people would call disruptive innovation, we're usually talking about combinations. So taking existing stuff, combining them together, especially when they seem to be from unrelated fields, that can be a source of radical innovation. Henry Ford and the Ford Motor Company. He didn't invent the assembly line, he didn't invent interchangeable parts, he didn't invent the automobile itself, but he combined all these elements in 1908 to produce the first mass market car, the Model T. The printing press, this one is great because all these components were so old when Gutenberg came along. So movable type, paper, ink, these weren't just like years old, they weren't decades old, they were centuries old. They were very old when he came along. And the inspired element from it is what this fellow's cranking right here, the screw press. And the screw press was inspired because it was a technology that had nothing to do with printing. It was used in food production. You would press olive oil or wine with these things. So taking a technology from another field, merging it into your own, that can frequently be a source of great innovation, of a breakthrough. Tim Berners-Lee, inventor of the World Wide Web. Tim Berners-Lee didn't have to invent the web from scratch. He built it on top of the internet, which is sort of the ultimate combination technology. It's a network of networks. It's a bunch of protocols that all manage to speak to one another. What he added was a hypertext layer. So they built, clicking on links and going places. That was the basic metaphor that he added, and that existed already. Hypertext was around. It was like a nerdy technology that it was like an answer waiting for a question. Would I get that backwards? You know what I mean? It was this nerdy technology that didn't have an application. He merged it with the internet, and of course, one of his other great innovations was releasing it public domain. It was released without a license. So those are the basic elements of creativity. Copy, transform, and combine. And you can see these at work in the arts, plenty. I demonstrated this with the film Star Wars. I nerded out to Star Wars for the second part of this video series, and here's what I came up with.
Even now, Star Wars endures as a work of impressive imagination, but many of its individual components are as recognizable as the samples in a remix. The foundation for Star Wars comes from Joseph Campbell. He popularized the structures of myth in his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Star Wars follows the outline of the monomyth, which consists of stages like the Call to Adventure, Supernatural Aid, the Belly of the Whale, the Road of Trials, the Meeting with the Goddess, and a bunch more. Also huge influences were the Flash Gordon serials from the 30s and Japanese director Akira Kurosawa. Star Wars plays much like an updated version of Flash Gordon, right down to the soft wipes and the opening titles design. From Kurosawa, we get masters of spiritual martial arts, a low-ranking bickering duo, more soft wipes, a beneath the floorboards hideaway, and a boastful baddie getting his arm chopped off.
You just watch yourself. We're wanted men. I have the death sentence on 12 systems.
War films and westerns were also huge sources for Star Wars. The scene where Luke discovers his slaughtered family resembles this scene from The Searchers. And the scene where Han Solo shoots Greedo resembles this scene from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The climactic airstrikes in the Dam Busters, 633 Squadron, and the bridges at Toko-Ri play very similarly to the run on the Death Star. And in many cases, existing shots were even used as templates for Star Wars special effects. There's also many other elements clearly derived from various films. We have a tin man like the Tin Woman in Metropolis, a couple shots inspired by 2001, a grab the girl and swing scene like this one in The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, a holographic projection kind of like the one in Forbidden Planet, a rally resembling this one in Triumph of the Will, and cute little robots much like those in Silent Running.
So this notion that we are remixing the work of others has plenty of implications on our ideas about originality, which are now intertwined with ideas of property. Ideas are considered property legally, morally, and this is understandable to some degree. When you've spent years working on something, you've endured heartache, setbacks, failure, it feels very viscerally in your gut like it's yours. I get that, I understand it, but I think it just isn't, not completely anyway. And I think, something that partially explains this is something called loss aversion. So we have a predisposition towards not losing what we feel is ours. So when we're copying from others, from our domain, we're not noticing that because we're doing it nonstop. We're very, very good copiers. We're very fluent at it. We do it a lot. We do it nonstop. And of course, you're not going to take notice of it. A couple ideas are distorting our view here. The first one is this notion of individualistic is the notion of the lone creator, individualistic creation, this romantic idea of the lone creator. And this is an idea that's in decline. I think a lot of people who do creative work don't necessarily think this way anymore, but it's still popular in the culture at large. We like this idea of the special, highly original creator. So with this project, with these talks I'm doing, I'm kind of trying to pound another nail in the coffin of this one. Ideas of property, this is an idea that, of course, is not going away. I'm not going to be pounding any nails in this coffin. This is a doozy. This is ingrained in our system of commerce, but it's a fairly recent idea, and it is, I believe, fundamentally misleading. Ideas aren't property. They aren't tangible. You can't actually steal an idea. If I take your idea, what I've actually done is copied it. You still have the idea. So it's just fundamentally different, and I think we need to treat it differently, copying ideas rather than taking them, removing it from your brain. I think we need to treat it differently because it indulges loss aversion, it indulges incentives towards protecting your property, towards making profit on your property, and it sends us down a path towards litigation, towards squabbling. Because ideas contain other ideas. That's how we build them. That's what they're made out of. New ideas are made out of old ideas. So ownership of ideas is complicated, and it gets unsustainably complicated when we try to completely cordon off our little creations and keep others out. Because if you look closely, your work contains other people's work. One more example. This is from part 3. This is about how Apple built the original Macintosh based on the work of Xerox.
Eventually, Apple got a load of the Alto and later released not one, but 2 computers with graphical interfaces, the Lisa and its more successful follow-up, the Macintosh. The Alto was never a commercial product, but Xerox did release a system based on it in 1981, the Star 8010. 2 years before the Lisa, 3 years before the Mac. It was the Star and the Alto that served as the foundation for the Macintosh. The Xerox Star used a desktop metaphor with icons for documents and folders. It had a pointer, scroll bars, and pop-up menus. These were huge innovations, and the Mac copied every one of them. But it was the first combination it incorporated that set the Mac on a path towards long-term success. Apple aimed to merge the computer with the household appliance. The Mac was to be a simple device, like a TV or a stereo. This was unlike the Star, which was intended for professional use and vastly different from the cumbersome command-based systems that dominated the era. The Mac was for the home, and this produced a cascade of transformations. Firstly, Apple removed one of the buttons on the mouse to make its novel pointing device less confusing. Then they added the double click for opening files. The Star used a separate key to open files. The Mac also let you drag icons around and move and resize windows. The Star didn't have drag and drop. You moved and copied files by selecting an icon, pressing a key, then clicking a location. And you resized windows with a menu. The Star and the Alto both featured pop-up menus, but because the location of these would move around the screen, the user had to continually reorient. The Mac introduced the menu bar, which stayed in the same place no matter what you were doing. And the Mac added the trash can to make deleting files more intuitive and less nerve-wracking. And lastly, through compromise and clever engineering, Apple managed to pare the Mac's price down to $2,500. Still pretty expensive, but much cheaper than the $10,000 Lisa or the $17,000 Star. But what started it all was the graphical interface merged with the idea of the computer as household appliance. The Mac is a demonstration of the explosive potential of combinations. The Star and the Alto, on the other hand, are the products of years of elite research and development. They're a testament to the slow power of transformation. But of course, they too contain the work of others. The Alto and the Star are evolutionary branches that lead back to the NLS system, which introduced Windows and the mouse, to Sketchpad, the first interactive drawing application, and even back to the Memex, a concept resembling the modern PC decades before it was possible.
So I'll wrap with this. This quote's kind of at the heart of what I'm trying to do with this series. By idolizing those whom we honor, we do a disservice both to them and to ourselves. We fail to recognize that we could go and do likewise. Charles V. Willey is a sociologist at Harvard. Yeah, this is kind of the heart of what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to diminish the accomplishments of the people that I talk about in this video series. What I'm trying to do is show that it's not magic, what they're doing. It's hard work. The techniques, the basic grouping of techniques are attainable to anybody. And you know, when a teenager makes a crappy little remix video and uploads it to YouTube, they're dipping a toe in the same pool as all these guys. I mean, it's real primitive, you're just beginning, but those are the basic techniques, what you use to make a bad little remix video. That's where it all begins. So I'm trying to encourage people to take these techniques, use them, push them, keep pushing them, and see how far you can take it. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate it. Thank you.